Hey, welcome back to Dealer Confidential, where we pull the curtain back on dealership transactions. And today it's a big curtain, Greg. It's all about goodwill and the factors that influence goodwill, or as we will talk about, the multiple. What is the multiple? What multiple are you using? Right? Everybody wants to know what the multiple is and how we got the multiple, right? And it's probably the no, I'd say it's the largest negotiation item in the whole deal. Would you not?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Al. And welcome to a bunch of new listeners and viewers to our podcast. Welcome aboard. Looking forward to having you. And we look forward, more importantly, to giving you the information that you need concerning either buying, selling, or just investigating some of the opportunities that exist in the automotive marketplace for you, your family, and your franchises. So welcome aboard, and we look forward to having you. Now, today, what we're looking at is a bunch of emails from some of our new listeners, Hal. And I would say half of those emails ask a very simple three words. What is blue sky?
Yeah.
They would like for us to define that and for us to get in a little bit more detail. And I think you mentioned some of it already, but let's delve into what is blue sky in the automotive industry.
Yeah, it's a term that's used pretty much interchangeably with goodwill. So goodwill and blue sky. And it's a simple concept, but it's hard to sometimes define. But it's the intangible value of the business beyond the hard assets. You got hard assets like parts inventory, FFE, which we talked about, furniture, fixtures, and equipment, real estate. Blue sky is intangible. It's the stuff. Well, it's like customer database. It's the stuff like the condition of the facility. It's sometimes the geographic location of the business within the market. It could be the brand and the brand equity. All of these things rolled in create an intangible value for a deal, and that's called a blue sky.
Yeah, and Hal and I have a checklist. God, it must be up to about 200 questions and checks on that list that we go through to try to figure out a fair price for the seller and then a fair price for the buyer. And again, at that point, it's negotiations. Hal and I will work with you with our legal team to come up with the right pricing and evaluation. But there is really not a clear definition of blue sky, as Hal just mentioned. Blue sky, a lot of it is just gut. And I hate to say it, a lot of it is what that owner of that franchise who wants to sell has built up for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, maybe longer in his family. And it's that gut saying, hey, my dealership, my franchise is worth X. And I can prove it because I have a financial statement that shows why. And everybody in industries tells me about this factor that you take your financial statement, profits, and you multiply it by anywhere from 1 to 10 times earnings. And that's my blue sky number. Hal,
Yeah.
could you walk us through that a little bit?
Yeah. It's we have these pricing guidebooks, and what are those? Those are just deals that have come in from other places that we use for comparative purposes, right? So Subaru in the Northeast, Subaru over indexes in the Northeast, as you know, Greg. It's going to carry a higher value in the Northeast than it does in Texas, for example, or in Utah, right? Why? Well, because historically, Subaru generates a higher multiple in that marketplace, okay? Because there's an affinity, there's a brand affinity, and there's a customer base in the Northeast that's strong. And so there's an owner body. We call it UIO, units in operation. There's an owner body in the Northeast that's Subaru strong. That's just one example. The multiple, I like to think of the multiple as a measure of risk. So as you mentioned, we're gonna spread the financials. We're gonna go back in history, 3 or 4 years generally,
Right.
sometimes more, and we're gonna recast it. What's recast mean? We're gonna do the add backs and the deductions on various categories. Probably too thick to get into on this broadcast, but there's things like dealer salary and depreciation and interest, not floor plan interest, not floor plan interest. Floor plan interest is a regular operating expense of a dealership. So we don't add that back, but we do add back the interest on a loan, for example. And we come up with a average cash flow over a 4 or 5 year period, right? And we weight those, and then we apply a multiple, again based on all these different factors that we're talking about. The multiple is a measure of risk of that historical cash flow continuing into the future, right? So let's just say it's $1 million a year. I'm making this number up. If it's a 5 multiple, that's a lower risk than if we assigned a 2 multiple. Okay. So 5 times the million is 5 million.
So
2
that,
times the million is 2. So we're giving it a value, if you will, or a measure of that historical cash flow continuing into the future. And that's really all a multiple is. It's a measure of risk based on all these different factors, right?
yeah. And I think what you mentioned before was probably the most important. Let's go back. I think it's podcast 3 when we talked about financial statements and getting your dealership in order to sell. And part of it is that financial statement. And so many dealers come to us and say, oh, I have a really good financial statement from 2023 or 2024. Meanwhile, 22 was terrible. Maybe 21 was terrible, but he's proud of the fact that he has one good year. That is not going to cut it. You have to show historically that your dealership has the ability to make a profit, a good, reasonable profit. If you don't have it, then your multiple is 0. You could ask whatever you want for the franchise, but we're not going to find buyers for it. So it's so important now, if you're thinking of selling your franchise and talking to us about it, get your financials in order. And Hal and I can help you. All you have to do is go on to our landing page, sign up, join us, and we'll be able to start answering questions, bring you in as part of our family. So
Yeah.
keep that in mind because you're going to need help doing this. And the second thing I want to talk about with Blue Sky, and then I'll throw it back to you, Hal, is that a lot of dealers get stuck, as I said before, believing that their franchise is special. It's not. Your franchise could be a good franchise. It's probably been great for your family, but don't think of it as your firstborn. Think of it as a business. Let us put a reasonable price on that franchise for you and your family, and we will find a reasonable buyer to buy it for that price. So let's start all over. Hal, jump back in and let's see what we could come up with for you and your family. More
Yeah,
importantly.
there's a mental picture that I was thinking of when you were describing that, and I think I've talked about this before. There's those 2 intersecting circles, right? We're looking for that intersection of interest between a buyer and a seller, and as Greg just pointed out, if we don't want to leave any money on the table for a seller, but if it doesn't represent a good business case for the buyer, then there is no deal, right? There won't be any deal. So it's got to really cover, if you think about it, it's got to cover 4 things. It's got to cover a reasonable rate of return for the risk. It's got to cover owner salary. It's got to cover the debt service, and it's got to cover any capex that is needed. I mean, capex could be, EV chargers or service lifts that need to be replaced or diagnostic equipment, etc. So those 4 things, we call it the buyer's test. If the cash flow covers those 4 things, then typically we've got a positive situation for both buyer and seller, and we can put a deal together, right?
Yeah, one of the emails, Hal, that I sent you about the Blue Sky, there was a second part of one of the emails, and he asked, how much does the manufacturer get involved in establishing Blue Sky? At first, you say probably not a lot, but then you realize it's probably everything because the manufacturer is what the prospective client is buying. He's buying a franchise from the manufacturer, theoretically. The dealer principal is, again, who owns the franchise, but the OEM is the one who's going to award the franchise. So we have to take, and this is where Hal and I talk, we talk to OEMs every single day. We find out what the OEM has planned for 2026, 2027, 2028. If the franchise is going, I should say, if the manufacturer doesn't have a lot of new products isn't mobilizing up against the hybrid versus the electric, if he's not, he or she at the manufacturer is not really gearing up to a successful 27 and 28 launch, then that takes away from the multiple of blue sky. So now the manufacturer, from a dealer standpoint, is a little bit at risk. You say, wait a minute, I don't see the product line. I don't see this. I don't see that. So maybe at one time, Toyota was a 10. Maybe Toyota drops down to an 8 on a factor, a multiple factor, because they don't have new products. And there's a couple of manufacturers like that right now that we won't get into. Send us an email. We'd love to work for you, and we'll figure out who those manufacturers are. And those are the ones that either, how we talked about this, either turn into a good deal because you're taking a slight risk on a manufacturer, realizing that no OEM is going to sit back and do nothing. They're going to come up with some new stuff and new products.
Sure. Yeah.
Or you're going to say, hey, this is not a franchise that we would recommend Mr. Smith buying and Mr. Jones selling. You can't ask the multiple because our manufacturer doesn't have the lineage in the future that calls for a 10 multiple, maybe
Yeah.
a 5, maybe a 7.
Yeah, no, dealer confidence in a brand will definitely drive value. I mean, if the brand is soaring, it's got new product, and by the way, there are reports that actually grade the OEMs on the freshness of the product, right?
Exactly.
But if a product line is fresh and the dealers are making good money and there's a lot of momentum, then that multiple moves up. And conversely, and we see this in a couple of cases right now, management changes and the dealers are kind of not happy with a policy change or what's going on with incentives, or there could be any number of things. Product recalls,
Right.
all
Good
of that
point.
stuff does impact the multiple. So we watch it closely because it does
Right.
move.
Now, again, signing up for our newsletter, Hal and I just finished a very interesting, I guess it's a study on a manufacturer. We won't mention the manufacturer right now, but this manufacturer has very little new product lines moving forward. In fact, there was some rumblings that they may be sold off or a conglomerate could come in and purchase them outright. And again, we're not going to mention who the manufacturer is, but we just finished a fascinating paper on it. That situation is one that you look at and say, like we said just a couple of minutes ago, it's either a huge opportunity or it's a huge bust. And that's what we look for. We look for potentially the opportunities for a dealer because neither one of us is going to waste your time on an opportunity that's going to be potentially a bust. Then again, you can say, wait a minute, every manufacturer has come up with new stuff. Maybe it's a year away. I'm willing to take that gamble. But what it does is as we said before, it reduces the blue sky multiple. Now, there's a couple of other things, and we're going to get into this right now, that could reduce that blue sky multiple. And that's looking, and we talked about this, Hal, in episode 4? What does the dealership look like? Where is he located? What kind of facility is it? Is there a body shop attached to it? What about VI? Virtual identity. All of these things factor into dealer blue sky because if any of those, and how you could address them all, any of those things come back negative, then guess what happens to your blue sky number? It's
Yeah.
got to come down. Go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, things like traffic count, number of parking places. You see these stores sometimes, Greg, in these metros. You can't even find a place to park. Those things all influence customer convenience, customer satisfaction. If you go into a lot and there's just the cars are stacked up on top of them, you might just drive right out. You want to buy a car, but you can't find a place to park. I'll tell you another thing that you might say, well, you can't control some of this stuff. Their two biggest costs in the store is your people cost, right? And your rent factor. I mean, there's some markets where, these are metro markets, but they're very cost effective, right? The cost of real estate is affordable. And you compare that market to, a very high rent district, right? And all things being equal, same brand, you've got the opportunity to make money on the 16th of the month as opposed to the 26th of the month, just because of your rent factor is competitive, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
And so, I'll give you another one. Taxes. There's some states that really have attractive tax structures and tax policies, right? So obviously the customers and dealers gravitate to those states. I'll tell you, North Carolina, very dealer friendly state in a couple of ways. And I've done some deals down in North Carolina. One is they don't have a right of first refusal. The manufacturer doesn't have a right of first refusal in North Carolina. So that's a dealer friendly statute on the books that dealer lobby has gotten to the lawmakers in North Carolina, and the manufacturer can't exercise the right of first refusal in North Carolina. They also, get this, they can't dictate or predicate a facility change on a dealer transfer in the state of North Carolina. So I've got letters from OEMs on those deals that say we reserve the right to come back here and change the facility if and when the law changes, right? So they put their foot in the sand on that. But there are different influences that impact this multiple that go way beyond what's happening inside the four walls of the dealership. It's the environment that they operate in that also has some impact on the multiple.
Absolutely. Now, let's talk about a couple other things, and then we'll get into some new topics. I keep bringing up VI because when I was with the OEMs, VI was the most wonderful thing in the world, and it was the worst thing in the world. The dealers, as we said in, I think, episode 4 again, that the dealer needs to comply with what the manufacturer is requesting in the sense of signage, rehabs to the building, new office furniture, new customer lounges, the whole 50-yard service drive-throughs. All of these things you don't think about, Mr. Dealer, when you're trying to buy a new franchise. But does that dealership, for example, I'll use one because I ran into this so many times, does this dealership have a customer-friendly service drive-through? Everybody knows what a service drive-through is. If that dealership doesn't, you better plan on adding one in, and that could mean $1 million to your franchise, what it's going to cost. It could also mean additional monies from the manufacturer because the manufacturers have been known to help and assist in some cases. Hal and I could help you through all of that. We know what the OEMs are looking for. We know how to structure it. We know what the business plan should look like. And more importantly, we know what that construction plan should look like and what the manufacturer wants to see. Don't do it alone. You really can't. It's almost impossible. So with that in mind, we're looking at the facility, and I'm going to jump ahead just a half a step because we want to get a couple other things in today. Last episode, we talked about personnel and management. And one of my dealers that I talked to recently tried to put a figure on what his management team was worth in the sense of blue sky, in the sense of value, in the sense of what am I going to ask, and can I legitimately ask an incremental value because I became dealer of the year 3 times in a row for XYZ manufacturer, not because of the dealer necessarily, but because of his management team. What's that worth, Hal?
It's huge. I mean, think of it. It opens the buyer audience up to people who may not have the automotive pedigree or the automotive resume that are required to get the OEM. If he can construct a proposal that he designates the current general manager, who's an excellent performer and plans to stay in, he can get the deal when he may not have the personal automotive resume to get approval.
Now, that is a very slippery slope. We have to just let our fans understand that do not try this experiment on your own because that could come back and absolutely bite you. Because if you put an individual forward to represent you with the manufacturer and it doesn't work, guess what? The manufacturer stamps null and void on that letter of intent, and you're finished. So please don't try to go there on your own. And again, Hal, I'm just so nervous about some of these things.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Obviously we need equity and the opportunity to buy equity for that general manager in the proposal is a big component if we can get it, because that binds that general manager to the store post closing. what OEMs will sniff out every time is, oh, you're just using this guy to get approval.
Right.
He's going to leave a week after closing or a day after closing, and then you don't have the qualifications to manage the franchise. They'll fix that by putting you on a term agreement, which will specify qualified general management. What's a term agreement? Well, it's got a definitive end date that if you don't meet the criteria, sales effectiveness, CSI, qualified management, new facility, VI facility, whatever it is, if you don't meet those criteria by a certain timeline, you basically you get terminated, right? So, or you get extended before you get terminated, but you're still under the gun to deliver all that stuff.
Yeah. We got about 8 minutes left in today's broadcast, Hal. And we got a couple of important subjects that we can still touch upon. We just talked about operational, the customer experience. I think we talked about in episode 2, critical. You have your geniuses, which BMW and a couple other manufacturers have actual geniuses. I'm not saying that, sarcastically. That's what they're called themselves. And they're the ones with the Palm Pilots and walk around answering dealer questions, which is great.
Genius bar, yeah.
Yeah. Does your potential new dealer that you're buying have those things in place? That adds value to it. This way you don't have to retrain, hire, or whatever.
Yeah, or a master tech.
Yeah.
What's going on in the shop? Do you have 10 techs and 3 of them are master techs, or none of them are master techs, right?
Right.
So that makes a difference.
You know what, Hal? I think that's a podcast by itself. That's one of my favorite, and that's fixed ops. So I think in the next couple of weeks, let's just have a podcast on fixed ops. I'll bring one of my old director of fixed ops who ran 12 stores with me. Fascinating guy, Paul. And he'll come on board and he'll give us a real background as to what it's like. And remember, podcast number, whatever it was, service usually carries 105% of that dealership. And if you don't show that on paper, then, there may be something wrong there. And we'll talk about that. And more importantly, we're throwing a lot of wrenches at you guys today. We're throwing a lot of negatives. Hey, don't do this, don't do that. The reason we're doing that is because, again, we don't want to waste your time, the selling dealer's time, and the OEM's time. That's what we're here for. Hal and I could sniff it out. We could figure out what to present. We put together a whole package, usually 100, 200 pages to go to the OEM on this buy-sell, sell side, buy-sell side. And that's really the most important thing that we have to put together. And all of those things are part of what we just talked about today. So we got a few minutes left. Hal promised me we're going to do a fixed op podcast.
Yeah, we do it. We've got several other ones queued up, but we'll work it in for sure.
Yeah.
It's a big component. And to the degree that your fixed ops covers your fixed expense, I mean, that's a value driver that will impact your multiple hands down. Yeah.
And just to tint it just a tiny, tiny bit, we have a lot of interest coming from, and we should mention this, a lot of interest coming from independents. The definition of an independent is basically a guy who sells pre-owned vehicles, sells and leases pre-owned vehicles, does not have an OEM shingle. By an OEM shingle, it means that he doesn't have a licensed franchise from an existing manufacturer. So we call them independents. A lot of these independents have done very well, Hal, as you know, over the past few years. They're cashed up and they're looking to buy an OEM franchise. We can help you with that. It's not the kiss of death that you were not an OEM, but it's going to take a little bit more, and that's what we're going to help you with. So we have a couple of emails. I'm not going to go through those today, but independents asking, how do I get into the game? That's going to be an episode by itself when we're dealing with independents who have the cash or looking to jump into the OEM market. So that's probably podcast 9 or 10 or maybe even past that. It is 11. Okay, great.
There's just a lot to talk about. That's the great thing about this business is there's so many little nooks and crannies on these deals. And that's what we're trying to impress upon you is we're trying to, like we say, pull the curtain back and be your advocate and be your voice and be your advisor so that you can get through these transactions with your goals intact.
Okay, Hal, we got about 5 minutes. What do you say we do a recap of the 8 sections that we talked about today, and we just do one line on each, starting out with the definition of blue sky. I think we'd handle that pretty good. Jumping back into the franchise brand power. What does the franchise bring to the table? New product, old product. More importantly, how do they handle their product line? How do they handle recall?
Vehicle segmentation in a geography, like the Subaru example.
Exactly, a good one. Market three is, I should say, section three was your market and locations.
Yeah.
Want to address that just for a few seconds, Hal, and I'll jump in on section four.
Well, I mean, again, traffic count and positioning. Is there customer parking? Is it easy to get in and buy a dealership? Are the chairs comfortable? Is it clean? Is it safe? Is it comfortable?
Rural versus urban
Yep.
location. We'll be
Yep.
talking about that a little bit
Yep.
more, and we'll
That's
help you
right.
with that when we get to know you a little bit better.
Yep.
I'm jumping in on number four, which is profitability and earnings. We talked about that quite a bit. So keep that in mind. We're not going to get into it on the recap. I think we talked about it pretty good amount of time today. Number five, Hal, OEM relations.
Yeah. The OEM drives a lot of the value depending on their their momentum, their product line, their brand policies. You know, there's lots of ratings that the JD Power ranks the OEMs, and you know, you get data on that and figure out who's hot and who's not.
And believe me, customers read those things. It takes them what, about a half a dozen clicks on their computer, and AI tells them exactly what that dealer is, what he should be concerning rankings and customer satisfaction.
Sure. Yeah.
Don't don't take that one lightly.
Yeah.
That's a serious one. Management in depth. We talked a little bit about that too today, Hal.
Yeah. And one thing that we didn't, owner dependency. So, can the owner go on vacation for 2 weeks and have the dealership continue to generate profits? I mean, how dependent is the performance of the store on the owner? Because the owner's leaving, right, on a sale. So, you want to be able to demonstrate, and this goes back to management team as well. You want to be able to demonstrate that the financial results are not too owner dependent. Okay.
Exactly. And the last one, I'll end it, and Hal, I'll ask you to close it in a second. Last section eight was growth potential in the market and market conditions. We talked a little bit about that when we talked about urban versus rural. We talk about ethnic makeup of the neighborhood that you're in, and has the dealer really catered to his ethnic background in that area, and has he done a good job with it? And more importantly, is there potential there? Is this a blighted area, or is this a vibrant coming area where the state and the city is putting money into these in areas with new
Yep.
housing, new development?
Yep.
Those are the things that we look at. And God, it takes us weeks just to do that kind of survey. Don't try it yourself. It's pretty tough. And then finally, wrapping this all up, this was probably the most asked about podcast we're going to be doing. It's such a hole, a black hole, that really, whether you're an existing dealer or a wannabe dealer or an independent, no one has a definitive answer on blue sky. Right, Al?
Yeah, it's a he said, she said type thing. And we try to package our rationale when we price a store, looking at all these different factors. But at the end of the day, again, back to those intersecting circles, you got to have an intersection of interest in order for this deal to come together. Sellers got to be satisfied with the proceeds. Buyers got to see opportunity and see a good return for the risk that they're taking on the business.
Yeah. We're going to be sending this podcast out to over 2 million automotive professionals, lawyers, OEM representatives, dealers, people who want to purchase. So we're going to be sending out over 2 million. This will reach over 2 million people.
Yeah.
So what we're going to ask from you is, when you see the podcast, throughout the podcast, there'll be a QR code. Please click on the QR code. That will link us back to what, Hal?
Well, it'll end up a landing page where we'll capture name, telephone, and email, and that'll give you access to newsletters and white papers and our contact information, a whole bunch of other information that we hope you'll find useful.
Yeah, I'm sure we will. We look forward to joining our family. We look forward to you to either sell your franchise and take care of your family, buy a franchise, take care of your family, or just become part of our family and just become a little bit more knowledgeable about the dealer franchise game. And it is
Yep.
sometimes a game. So
And
thanks for
next up,
coming.
Greg, we're going to go to your specialty, and that is how to buy a dealership, right? So, what are the things that make a difference when we're buying a store. Greg's the expert on that. And I look forward to that on the next podcast.
Me too. Thanks, Al.
All right. Thank you, Greg. Take care,
Talk
guys.
soon.
Thanks for joining.